Time maintenance times over pi times over calculation setting times square time root time calculation screen location setting and provision. Directing on set lines of sequence on communication setting and time communication line affairs location system and quantum. What we have to understand is what is going through time. We go through time, which is a force of communication internal to external force into the negative polarities, into the positive position to abstractions. Remember, you have to perceive everything and I bring it in through consciousness. You don't bring it in, your time is already taken over through time. That processing of time, or over on position of set position, negative over lines, or negatives over square root, negatives over line position of primer circuits, or line course centers and convergence system into position. So what we have to truly understand is how we set the time, which is no time. Okay? It's all lines of structure. It's all lines of no structure. How we see our life force is through time maintenance. Now, getting in that position is truly understand how to coordinate through that. Let's go into embedding lines of sequence into planes of existing. We'll go set lines of travel, direct lines of grounds, process lines, position location of systems, all through calculations, all through setting, all through operation. We'll start with attractions. Okay? Outside another one, coordination, setting, attraction, locations. Directing roots over lines over pi over set lines of sequence. Okay, so then you get embedding and screen lines adaptations of flux. Okay, so you are in the center right here. That's you, right? You don't leave that. You got 3 circuits and 3 grounds and set lines of set position, right? You don't leave that. You stay within that, right? That's the bandwidth from longitude and its latitude in track location. Okay, you do not go here. You do not go here because you're in somebody else's time frame. So once you understand that position, this is what happens next. So you're standing there. Okay, I'm showing you location, how that works in the dream worlds of the real-time setting locations. All right, so this is your platform. Start at that position, right? Now, what you have to understand, you have 3 convergence system interactions, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, how you look, right? So in that set location setting, you use the mind. The mind is all lines of travel. That's ongoing through travel, through the planes of no planes of existing. So it's going through frames and seconds, minutes, and hours, which you can't stop. You have to balance it out, is to bring things in through time, which is no time. Structure of time itself. So to modify these things is understanding how to go through its platforms and attractions in that directions. That comes into your embedding system through time scale of time measure. Okay, so you process that in position lines of system into platforms and set lines of travel. Okay, so when you get in that position locations, now basically you want to go through the flux capacitor because your location system is travels at point lines of graph. That processes your system, how you see the grounds, how you see the panels, and how you see the ceiling of your simulation in set lines of travel. Okay? It's very complicated stuff, how you see yourself as soon as you close your eyes. The body itself is going through its film strip. Okay? Seconds. Okay? Millimeters by seconds, it all in frame of time. Everything is going through time. These are 3 box centers of time through triangulation of roots over pi. Okay? So it's very complicated how this works. Door recognition of time frame. Door recognition of time frame in correlation setting and attraction. So that's how it's set up when you close your eyes. The scanning, line, screen adaptation, observation lines of sequence, in position remote or recharge, right? So this is exactly what happens. So in that position location, the mind itself keeps running the system, right? Which is the operative location, the cosmos, and the servicing engine of its own saying that it keeps running through its polarities, right? The total external force that keeps going. You can't stop that. You got to bring it in to stop it. So you have to bring the time measure, time scale, time balance, time calculation, time square root, times pi, over lines of correlations, communication lines, negative over pi, over lines of pi of time. So in that position line system, you have to basically bring these things in and travel. So once you bring that in, okay, it changed the structure of design, okay, which is the brain. Brain is the hardware to the software of the mechanism that brings the all-line position. But the center operation of you never leaves the center operation which is your primer. Okay? So as you move, everything's moving with you. Everything's moving with you. Okay, how you see the background, foreground, and locations. As long as you codify, you're totally fine in sim, right? But you don't codify everything. Everything goes in the opposite directions, which now the algorithm is taken over you through binary, through codification, through encryption. So this is where you have to come into your own thoughts, your own thinkings, your own actions, your own emotions, because if not, it's already taken over with you through time, not of time. So it's going to be setting you up if you don't set up your own systems. So understanding that is time itself, through maintenance. Not getting into that position locations, you understand how to use it through all levels of your conscious levels of your awareness. In that location setting, process your system, how to see that in its embedding system. Okay, and that indicates setting goes to your platforms in your cerebral of your cortex of your fluids, directing inset lines in position. Your supercharging highway is the body itself. Now modifying that position location goes to the seconds, minutes, and hours of meters, metrics, and scale. That bounces out lines, all communicates to its convergent system, all through travels and set calculations. Okay? All right. So there's a scanning options system here. It's a laser that goes back and forth. Right? So you have to control that in your mind. You have to correlate that. You have to bring in the actual schematics because it's already set up in time frame already. You're going through your memory cortex in that position so you don't get confused in that position setting. As long as you process the mind of frame, you're good to go. As soon as you start speaking, overriding your structure, that puts you in confusion setting through time itself. All right? So once you get into that position, it's much easier to process through. So the actual wall starts moving itself. All levels of a new operation, set lines of travel. Okay, so now you're changing the structures through your mind, which is changing the brain of set lines of travel. Okay, so you're changing the walls, right? So in that position, changes the lines of structure in this locations, changing the wall again through the mind. All right, but see, the thing is, your structure, your schematics, your primer is already set up through memory. Okay, so it gets very complicated as the wall moves with you at the same time, rotates the system, and ground centers a sequence, and gravity lock location to a setting. Process of that indication system changes all lines of time frame. But this is what goes on in your set position of your simulation. Okay? So you go with the direction, and you stay in the center. You use your mind to change the structure. That changes the brain, to converts the system, the hardware to the software, to the mechanisms that correlates the new mapping system, right? Now that's just levels of the networks, of the existing, of the bandwidth, of longitude and latitude of streaming. So the body's indicating in that where it goes into its arrows of indication, all through set operation, right? All through traction. Okay, so that's what goes on in your mind of imagination. Okay, this is a front wall and perceptions over screen. Okay, so it's very complicated if you don't understand what is going on as you're using your imagination, moving things through telekinesis, moving objects, moving places, moving locations. And it's all interpreted how you use your mind through volume and mass and calculation through square root. That processes your capacity through your time capacity of your time measure and time scale. Now, and that communicates to its position. It gets a lot more easier as you understand position. Okay? That's just a basic example. I know it's very construct drawing. You have to stand in position. All right, so line signals. Let's get into the basic lines of A, B, and C. Okay, equals lines to the heart. Okay, heart to the ventricle line centered, 3 flux over centered, Fibonacci over lines. Now this is codification setting and square roots and travel. All right, so the central is the artery. Core centers is the ventricle system. So the process lines A equals lines at V, position lines at B over attractions, bounce lines directing ground centers into flights over screen. So this is how you go in the schematics, how the heart itself is just the void itself. We already know that in set position operation line settings. You codificate the system, Balance line course centers in communication setting, confirmation system, alter track through time, over line center locations of time, in position of no time, and framing of time itself. So getting comfortable, getting directions on centers of communication setting and travel. Okay? This is the center line course centers, what's going on with the framing communication in your heart. Okay? Your heart doesn't have a shape, you have to bring that in. Your heart doesn't have a time, you have to bring that in. But the heart itself is just the void itself, which is the mass, which is the calculation, which is the heart reactor, which is the time reactor, which is the body reactor. Everything in the heart itself is all modifications, which is the opposite of everything, what's everything of the positive of everything. So when you start touching things, you have to bring in the positive and negative, right? Because it's already in its connections. The heart itself is the harmonization setting to the tone line, to the correlation setting, the convergence system, and time reactor that process communication into colors, lines, and patterns that gets in position to your light metaphors. Directing light signals, location setting, process indicates the system to a location to its cursor that correlates communication lines in position to its operation line centers, that communicates to its ground, communicates to its cerebral, that changes the correlations of time line, communicates to its fluid, and of course set position lines of travel, directing line ground centers in sequence location setting to cerebellum. Sets tone line course centers, time frame, time calculus, time sequence, times pi. Puts all communication setting and ground lines in sequence all through calculation. Okay? So the heart doesn't have a size. It's a mass. It's a heart reactor. It's a time reactor. It's a flux reactor. Okay? So we have to understand how to use that in set lines of measure and scale. So in that position location system, you have to consciously understand what you're bringing in is what you're perceiving in set position lines of travel. This helps you to identify your set lines of communications. All right? So it's very important. Now, if you want to add equation lines of 24 flights, and set lines of 8 lines of scale, right? So that's 24 lines of volume and position location setting through 8 lines of scale. Now the heart line comes in conversion that overlines the void, operate the signals, and 3 square roots in travel, and 3 direct lines of signal. So the calculation of the ventricular line course centers in the course that communicates to its arteries, direct lines of compulsory line course centers in the pulmonary tract is the process into its pacemaker. The pacemaker location is the convergence system through time measure that comes into odd and even. The line position locates to its primal circuits, primal measure, primal scales, and prime numbers. Process line screen adaptation to its cycle. The correlates and communicates to its system. So the heart itself is just nothing but a mini computer of itself location setting. But to the brain is a cursor through indication of windows and frames per second per pi. Time calculation times squares. Process line communication. The pacemaker is a pause line. Okay? It's a pause reactor. Now that process course is a time frame. Correlates it travels. Communication lines impulse. So the operation lines a sequence into alpha, delta, and theta of communication. This is all through the heart. Interaction. Okay? So there's no shape of the heart, guys. It's just the void itself. It's going through travel. So at times measures scale, at time meets your system, and at time calculates your system as you're going through your video projection. You have a slide projector through a cartridge. The heart lines is a line signal that process indicates the setting that has 3 ventricular lines of valves. That direct lines in your past, present, and future that tweaks the wires that goes in position locates to its back door. Now that central lines is calculates the screen lines into security lines of panels in perimeters and parameters. Changes the color each lines of space of time. Now that's a light metaphor to light tractions that has a light signal that operates at signal case setting to its convergence system all through travel. Through the heart. Okay, to the pulmonary tract, which is the ventricular system. All right, so once you understand that, then you understand position location and when you come in that communication lines. Flat line, that's 4 lines of centers of travel, 4 docking stations. Now it's going to get more complicated because it processes it indicates setting the time square. There's 4 time squares there in traction. Now, in that calculation, line ground centers, you set a solar screen that has a high signal and location lines of setting. That's a process of indicator how you use the position of lines of pumping in that position. Same pattern, same rhythm, same correlations, different time, right? 3 signals of pause, process course centers, convergence system time, line center. Same pattern, operation lines of signals. off setting, off calculation. Yeet, 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 yeet. So your heart goes up in time. Your heart goes up in harmonics. It's a harmonic reactor. That process that indicates the setting, process your core settings that communicates the setting. The process line indicates position location that gets and communicates to its void. The vast, the volume, the velocity, the vacuum. The operation, the intelligence of direction, division, location, dimension of space and time. That's the heart. The heart is just the void itself. But as you touch things, it automatically changes the harmonics of its system, of its energy, vibration, and its frequencies, of its heart setting of time. Time sequence, time calculation. Now we're in 25. I changed time frame lines or clocking lines of screen into 26 over scale. And we're going to convert the system back in 8 lines of screen. Dimension line over solar line, rotation lines is set location of screen, all through the heart. That's a lot of activity in set position processing through time scale. Now, I'm just using one flux capacitor into Fibonacci square root. Process of indication lines, solar generation lines, planetary alignment, and square screen and location. Directing ground centers. Remember, this is all convert in set position inside setting through space lines. Solar direct lines, solar panels, process of indicates the setting and solar screens. Change the light metaphors of time frame. Process that indicates the setting all through travel. Okay? And you work with inside and set calculation screen locations and 4 scales of communication to a setting. That's all through the heart right now, through pulping. All right, the compulsories go through highline grids, skyline panels, cross-line screens, direct lines of flux, box frames, triangulation over square. Square roots over lines, times centers of screen, 3 centers of travel, 4 centers operation lines of set and sequence. Boxing frame triangulations, heart direction timeline, and frame line core centers, dimensional door screens adaptation. That's the heart. Frame core centers, box frame correlation and communication metric line core, calculation screen location adaptation of flux. So indicate the pulsonary line centers. There it is. That's going through the heart, right? So the pulmonary tracts change the time frame. They change the core centers in position to its polarities, directing ground sense core lights communication to its position to its proxy channels, directing online sequence, 3 centers of conversion, 3 centers of scale, and 3 location setting and position lines of operation. This is all through the heart. So the heart is a wave channel. It's everything you can imagine. It's the process how you bring things in. The heart is everything that you get in position to the dream world. But the interline connection setting is a concept of value that you have to mass its system. This is a correlation lines of travel. Now, for you to identify that, it's through a pacemaker. Now, the pacemaker is a box frame and a triangulation flux that correlates a time frame and correlation lines of travel and directions, all through the heart line of indication. Okay? So your test is all based on how you come into this through solar attraction, all through the heart. So we're going to go through rhythm cores, high core centers, and position lines, ion lines, settings, and sequence location of flux over line and lines to core center converted system all through voicing pattern. Coloration lines of patterns, process lines of indications, voicing position locations. Heart rate and timeline has its own voice pattern. Okay, that's the heart. So it's a waving chart, alpha, beta, theta, mega. Okay, so it's got 2 tones of a 0, process lines of 0 over 1, set location lines of 0 over 3, process lines of negative over 1, process lines of 0 over 2, coloration setting travels over 2 over 3. Okay, that's a heart chart. Now it has a core centers in a constellation system and in position lines and activation lines of screen, directing embedded over flux over screen, flux over 3 centers of measure and 4 centers of scale. Process indicates lines of flux over line, ground centers, and line core center and position lines of grounds, embedding over sequence. Copy and paste, abled. Set line position disengage, engage, process lines of indication, setting lines of travel. So process lines of alpha, beta, equals lines of theta, operation lines of omega, operation line high core centers, zeta, zeta core centers of gamma, gamma line core centers in position of process line, directing onset lines of sequence, heart timeline, frame line core centers time setting, all through the heart. So heart is also a monitoring system that monetizes every location to its compulsories, to its pulperation system, and travels in location setting to its pacemaker. That indicates lines of ground centers to its arteries, 4 centers of travel. So that's communication setting of 4 centers of flux and 3 centers of scale. That's the heart. So it's very complicated through drawings, guys, but you have to truly understand the heart itself is the structure of itself, its own system of its void of itself that masses everything to its volume. So that's what your test is based on, how you convert the system into your heart through scale, through a monitoring system, through correlation lines of panels, into a pacemaker, and activation strain, and time maintenance. Okay? So it's very powerful when we come into that, right? So we're in 20 centers, and basically you got position lines. I'll wait till it gets to line position location 21/1. So I've got 20 equals lines of 21. Right, so the compulsories, the ventricle system is time sequence. So it's time measuring in scale that's through skipping through time. So that's 20 over lines of tractions into 25 over line sequence. Okay, so time centers and lines skipping time frame, 6 lines of scale. Box frames, triangulation over lines of screen. Okay, that's the heart, right? So it's all time maintenance where you have to understand the correlations of time frame. The time's calculation over lines of pi that goes through lines of time through its calculation screen locations. So I'm looking at the time measure, time scale, time mark. So that puts lines of 20 over lines, directing coming into over lines of 21. Now it's 22. The times over lines of pi sets position lines of setting into 22 traction. Okay, 22 line centers in the communication setting. Alpha, beta, zeta, gamma. Wave screen embedded over a screen. That's the heart. So the heart measures the scale. It's a balance of indicated system. It's everything you can imagine. But to process that, guys, you have to understand the ground lines. Understand that first, what it is in position to its waves. Understand the central wave. Right? Your heart just not, it does everything, right? It goes, okay? So every time you go to high time frame line, core centers of your tracker system, your heart changes timelines of scale. It changes seconds, minutes, and meters, and metrics and scale. That process indicates a setting to a teeter-totter, going back and forth in set lines of travel. Direct and redirect, right? Through the heart. That's the heart, right? So the heart measures its scale. It bounces of everything through its embedding system. 4 centers of positions, 5 centers lines of travel. That's the heart. But the heart always has to have a waving central of a pulmonary line of a track. The core centers is lines that locates to its atmospheres. Travels of point lines of grounds, bounce lines, B equals lines of C, E equals lines of A. Indicate process lines of B, C lines of A position lines of B over C, B equals lines of D equals lines of A equals lines of D equals lines of F equals lines of C. That's the heart. So it's very, very complicated because all the heart is a dimensional line center location, has a solar graph line position with dimensional solar sail. The travel line condition setting has a clocking system of 0 gravity, of 0 calculation of square roots, and 0 operation of void itself in travel. That's the heart. So I want you guys to understand how you see your heart when you bring it in through its waving system of central line condition setting that kicks everything into high drive. Okay, so I'm not going to get too complicated, but you have to truly understand how to measure the scale and understand how to balance out your position locations when your heart is going through time. It's going through time. It's not at time. It's not bounce of time because it's already been through time with you guys, which is its memory. So I don't want you guys to get very confused when you come into the mind adaptation of 4 settings that gets communications of time reference of time confusion. Everything time measures, everything time scales, everything is a time balance because it's already been through its time. It's already been through its correlation. It's already been through its wave. It's already been through its central system. It's already been through its kick drive. Now you just have to modify what you already created through structure. What you created through schematics is staying in the center operation setting to your primers, that gets you in communication to full lines of signals, knowing exactly what's going on, and that covers the system to its cursor. So the brain understands the connection system, understands the interline connection, interwebbing line core setting, interact location setting that interweaves the core standards, the codification system all through travel, through coding, binary, and location setting that puts you in position location that locks the screen location to its encryption, all through traction, all through locations. Okay? So this helps you to identify why your heart does this. And now you know, all through heart of reaction, or heart of time frame, or heart of conversion and travel and direct lines of link and process of indication in the future of the now. That's the heart, right? So the heart can be any shape, any time frame. It has no correlations of position. It has no correlations of balance because it knows exactly what it is. It's the V itself that vases, that volumes, that vacuums, and set lines of travel. That goes to the acceleration, a part of accelerations, AB over C, V equals lines of E, E equals lines of V, E equals lines of C over B, over lines of A, question over C. There's the heart. So that's what I want you guys to get in positions of. Okay, I know it's a lot more complicated for you guys to understand these things, but you understand through schematics how it's already set up in position to your set travel. Your whole schematics is already set up in memory, but you have to process your memory to no memory. And the only way to do that is come into nothing information how you see the heart itself. It's not for you to identify the heart. It's for you to identify the heart you already have, because you already processed through time already. So this helps you to identify in that position locations how you see it through time of scale, time of balance, times of measure in that position, right? So when you're speaking, the heart's going with that direction. It's going with you in that direction. It's not going in the opposite direction. So there's a position location of settings, right? Right? So it's all different levels when you reach those lines of flux, time capacitor, body capacitor, location, time reactor of flux. So processing that position locations truly understands how to indicate this setting, right? So in information lines, I got 12,000 signature lines of grounds, converting set the position of barcoding, directing line, set location of lines that line core centers the conversion system in this design that correlates communication on time frame. The process indicates and sending and travel communicates in positions into 21 volume and 8 lines of scale. Thumbs up, travel communication. That's the heart. The heart is our harmonic reactor and a responder to a transmitter to a receiver. You have to understand how this all works through the ventricle system of time reactor. Clocking centers of 0, ground centers of sequence, platforms over lines, and position of pi generation lines of setting, position operation sequence. There's the heart. Okay? So now you understand there's no balance of anything in position to its void itself. Same with the grounds, it's the void. But the heart itself is just the space itself. You got to perceive and bring things in. How you see the heart, how you see space, how you see time, how you see the now, how you see formula, how you see equations. That's the converting system where you guys are in conversion, understand that through inception. For you to identify these things, you have to understand the communication setting to its compulsory, to understand how it comes into the paraphrasing, para-units, para-correlations, time measure, time scale, dimensional, and solar sail. This helps you to identify your system as what the heart is doing in travel, okay, in that positions, right? Up in signal, down scale, right? So your heart goes on so many lines of conversion system altitudes. Oxidized settings, oxidized location system, and track communication setting into hydrogen. Okay. I know it's a lot, eh? So the converter sent in the hypertone, directing online centers, converter system. Y-line screens, directing ground centers, directions over lines, readjusting, operations of networking. That's the heart. So there's a reason why it's called the H. The H is the heart reactor that processes everything of indicates the setting that goes through everything to its position, to its pulmonary settings, into its ventricle system, into travel. That direct lines that calculates strain lines, adaptation its position to its process calculation lines. It's a constellation. Okay, it's everything through its angles, it's everything through its provision, it's everything through schematics, but it's everything of mass, of volume. Now you have to really, really understand how this all works in lines of travel. That puts everything, locates the system, how you see it through settings, all through palpitation. All right, it correlates your time frame. And as you go through your slide projector, it processes and indicates the system go through dimensional levels, higher levels, a set position to its stream lines of sequence that puts you in platitudes, locates setting, as space lines, and lines of travel. Okay? So, there you go. The heart itself, right there. That's a test, all right? So, the heart is everything you can imagine, guys, but you have to fully integrate the body. To understand the dream world is to understand the real world, okay? Because the animation itself is just the metaphorically designed that you already construct in your system that's already identified through the mind line. The mind is everything through provision, but what you have to understand is the indication system is your primer circuits and prime numbers. And the data formation setting and travel, that's the heart. Oh, we lost an angle, right? Lost conversion, lost time, centers, and palpitation setting and travel. So it's went, that's the heart. So we have to understand how to convert this system back in tractions, back in setting, back in operation line settings, alpha, beta, theta. Okay? That's the heart. So everything of the heart has a bedding system. That process indicates the setting of travels. The mind alterates the setting of the space and time that converts it to internal and external location to its polarities. Okay? So you have to truly understand how to bed it in through a window of frame of communication. Okay? As you cross angles in process of indication lines of travel. Okay? In set position, the rainbow and the frost bridge travels together in one. Booyah! The rainbow and the frost bridge. Right? But the most important thing with the heart is everything of time. Processing that is going through time, looking at time. That's totally fine in that positional case setting, but you understand what the heart is. It's all measure and scale that processes your system of pattern recognition, face recognition, and configuration lines of time frame. That's the heart through face recognition, right there. Right? You see how you see the heart, not how everybody else sees their own heart. Right? So you have to identify how this all works in time frame. If I understand what my heart is, I have to understand what it is through monetization. So I have to understand what it is through positive and negative. But first I have to understand what it is through its void first. Then I really understand what dark matter is. Then I understand what a black hole is. That's right, guys. The heart itself is its black hole. And it doesn't indicate anything in positions until you bring in your mind and imagination. Now, when you bring in your mind and imagination, that's how you come into correlation lines of balance. And it's all done through how you see things in subconscious, the subterranean to the super of its consciousness. That process you going through time of indication of what your body's going through is the algorithm. Okay? Without the heart, there's no time of algorithm. Okay? So it's very important you understand how this all works in set position lines of travel. Okay? Setting lines of binaries. These are the binaries in set position. Going inside the body. It is traveling through its heart direction time frame. Binaries. Going into the mapping system of your body. It's set lines of travel. Okay? Setting up its bedding, setting up its power, setting its atmospheres, of its highways, of tubing, operation lines of sequence. That's the heart. So heart is everything you can get in positions of, which is everything in mass of space itself. That's right, guys. It's the void. Okay? Until you bring things in. Okay? Understand dark over light, light over dark. Understand conceptions over pi, directing ground set lines of sequence. But you've got to get control of your time maintenance. How to modify that through triangulation of flux. If you get a box screen and course centers and emotional lines of track centers and identification light metaphors, box frame. Okay? 4 centers, 4 signals, arrows of indicates inside travel, process of indicates setting, flux over set travel. There's the heart, right? But the heart needs a wave setting, right? Central line core centers, alpha, right? That's alpha, right? Beta comes in, goes down in set lines of sequence, right? Then we get into omega, right? That's the heart, right? So everything in the heart is its time reactor, heart line, position line, it's compulsory. That process, pulse line, centered line, direct location to its ventricular system. That process indicates setting, travels. That indicates position location, its computer operates lines of screen. Setting operates line set that locates the setting in its converting system, all through time, all through maintenance, all through position. Okay? So that's what I want you guys to indicate, how you actually see the communication setting. I want you to time frame your hearts in seconds, minutes, and hours. Okay? And you're going to see the compulsories, how it comes into how you see it through the system. I see a wave in central setting, operation sequence, cloud line convergence system. The heart is the most powerful set position that you can identify in its time reactor, okay, in its flux reactor, in its body capacitor of its reaction system. Okay, so it reacts to everything that has an inner pulse to an outer pulse. Okay, that's a ventricle line communication lines to its outer lines of sync. Getting in that position location, process how you go through emotional lines of traction. Okay, which is the convergent system to your light metaphors. Okay, it's no difference in the brain line position where it fires and wires. Heart does the same thing, but it sets the time, it sets the tone, it sets the scale, it sets the bounce. Okay, it sets you through time. So you have to really understand what goes on with the pulsionary tracts that communicates your system into your polarities in process of communications. All right. So I'm trying to get you guys an idea so you can get a true understanding what this is in all formations and setting, which is nothing of mass of everything, of collaboration, of partnership with you in the dream world and indications and the real world together in one. Okay? So it's nothing but a harmonic. Okay? So it's everything that you bring in, how you bring in step by step, pieces by pieces by puzzles, putting this all together through its construct that's already done through time. Okay? Not of time. Okay? So you have to really stand going back through time, or going through time, or overriding of time. Okay? Or underscore of time, or under positions of time. Time maintenance of time maintenance of high of time. You set the tone, you set the position, you set the operation. Because if you don't, the algorithm is going to take over you through time and scale and bounce and synchronicities and location setting. And how you see that in set positions, that's how fast things can be taken over. If you don't set your own system of your own space, of your own time, of your own formula, of your own equations, of your own thoughts, actions, and emotions. Now, once you get in that position of this convergent system, you truly understand how to see the self, in the self, of self-modification. That gets you in all directions of balance, of indication inside, of what that means to you, of heart recognition of time. Okay? All right. See you guys in 5.